Huge inequality. Very rich and very poor. Inequality is a growing problem in the world, and it shows no signs of slowing down. One of the most troubling dimensions of inequality is that the rich are getting richer, while the poor are getting poorer. In some countries, such as in Sweden and France, there's actually a small middle class. But in other countries, such as America and China, there's not even a middle class. This article discusses both sides of the inequality issue. Why it's important to address these issues and what we can do to fight against inequality. What is inequality? Inequality is the difference in wealth and income between different groups of people. It can be measured in a number of different ways, but the most common way to look at it is by using a Gini coefficient. The Gini coefficient measures inequality on a scale from 0. Everyone has the same wealth and income, to 1. One person has all the wealth and income. The higher the number, the greater the inequality. There are a number of reasons why inequality is increasing around the world. Some of it is down to changes in economic policies, like cuts in welfare benefits or tax credits, which can have a direct impact on people's lives. Other factors, like globalization, are more difficult to control. But whatever the cause, it's clear that inequality is a big problem. What does this mean for us as individuals? Well, as inequality increases, it becomes harder for everyone to get ahead. This can lead to problems like poverty and social exclusion, which can have a negative impact on our overall well-being. Inequality also makes it harder for businesses to grow and create jobs, which could have wider implications for our economy as a whole. So what can we do about it? To begin with, we should agree that inequality is a problem. This is exactly what the Index for Economic Inequality does. It allows us to understand how different countries have done in tackling inequality, and how they compare to each other. The answer is not simple. There are many issues to consider when talking about reducing inequality. But the most important thing is to start by acknowledging its existence. As Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous quote goes, "When we look into our own hearts, we see them filled with prejudice." If we can admit that some people are worse off than others because of their race or gender, why shouldn't we allow ourselves the same compassion for those who are worse off due to theirs? We need to be compassionate towards others, because the reality is that people are not equal. Poverty can be one of many things. It can be a lack of access to good education, or it can be a lack of health care. Poverty is never simply about money. Poverty is about power and privilege. But first let's tackle inequality by allowing each country to set its own priorities for reducing inequality. Only then will we know what works and what does not work in tackling inequality across the world, so that we can learn from each other's successes and failures. Is there inequality in the U.S.? There is a lot of talk about inequality in the United States. Is there really a lot of inequality? And, if so, where is it? The most obvious measure of inequality is the Gini coefficient. The Gini coefficient measures the extent to which a distribution of incomes is unequal. A Gini coefficient of 0 indicates perfect equality, while a Gini coefficient of 1 indicates perfect inequality. In 2015, the Gini coefficient for the U.S. was 0.45. There are other ways to measure inequality, but the Gini coefficient is probably the best one to use if you want to compare different countries or compare different groups within a country. According to the OECD report, Income Inequality in OECD countries, the top 10% of earners in the U.S. earned 47% of all income in 2016, while the bottom 50% earned only 7%. This means that there is a lot of inequality in the U.S. Elimination of the middle class. The biggest issue facing America today is inequality. There is a huge divide between the very rich and very poor, and it's becoming more and more difficult for the middle class to survive. The very rich have been getting richer and richer, while the very poor are getting poorer and poorer. This is creating huge problems for society as a whole. The middle class used to be the most important part of American society. They were the ones who worked hard and played by the rules, and they were the ones who were able to support themselves and their families. But now the middle class is disappearing, and it's all because of inequality. The very rich are getting richer and richer while the very poor are getting poorer and poorer, and this is causing huge problems for society as a whole. There are a lot of reasons why inequality is such a big problem. First of all, it creates huge barriers to progress for the rest of us. If there is an enormous divide between the very rich and very poor, it becomes much harder for ordinary people to get ahead. We can't build a strong economy if there is so much division between those who have wealth and those who don't, and that's exactly what we have been seeing in the last few decades. And of course, over time, this leads to a lack of cohesion in society and makes it harder for the economy to grow. Secondly, there is a lot of evidence that inequality leads to greater life satisfaction among the rich than among the poor. One study looked at data on self-reported happiness for people who were listed as middle class or above back in 1977, and compared that with similar data from 2007. What they found was that the average level of happiness among those who were middle class or above was much higher back in 1977 than it is today, almost twice as high. The same is true for people who are very rich. People who are very wealthy generally report being far less happy these days than they were in 1977. To put that another way, inequality has a much larger effect on happiness than money does on happiness. What's more, we have evidence that income inequality is negatively associated with health and mental well-being, something that has been found to be true even among countries with similar levels of per capita income. The same is true for other indices of social welfare as well as life satisfaction, trust and other measures of human development that are rooted in our subjective evaluations of the quality of our lives. The reason I say, precisely, is because there are some cases where inequality can actually be good for the economy, particularly if it is more concentrated in small companies or in the middle class. How to solve this problem? There is a huge inequality in the world today. A small number of people are very rich while a large number of people are very poor. This inequality is causing many problems, including poverty, hunger, and climate change. How can we solve this problem? One way to solve this problem is to create more jobs. If there are more jobs available, then everyone will have a chance to find one and earn a living. This will help to reduce the inequality between the rich and the poor. Another way to solve this problem is to provide universal health care. This would ensure that everyone has access to medical care no matter how rich or poor they are. This would reduce the amount of time that people have to spend looking for a job or trying to pay for medical expenses on their own. Both of these solutions would require a lot of work and money. But if we can solve this problem, it will have a big impact on our economy and our society as a whole. Thanks for watching. See you on the next episode.